viewers, you are now tuning in to St. Philip AME Church.
Come on, the song says, there will be glory after this. And we want you to remember that this morning. Come on, the song says, there will be glory.
There will be glory after this.
There will be victory.
There will be victory after this.
God will turn.
God will turn it around.
He will bring it around.
There will be glory after this.
That's it. Come on. There will be glory.
There will be glory after this.
There will be victory.
There will be victory after this.
God will turn.
God will turn it around.
He will bring it around.
There will be glory after this.
God specializes
God specializes
in things impossible.
He's not too
It all is lost.
not sorry.
He showed himself
Strong in glory now. Don't give up. He'll come through. There will be glory after this.
That's it. Come on, there will. That will be victory.
There will be victory after this.
God will turn.
God will turn it around.
He will. He will. There will be glory.
There will be glory.
There will be glory.
There will be glory after this.
Come on, put your hands together and remember, through all that we're going through, there will be glory after this. There's going to be a praise. There's going to be joy and a testimony. There will be praise after this. There will be joy after. There'll be a testimony after this. There will be glory after. There will be praise. There will be praise after this. There will be joy. After this. There'll be a testimony. There will be glory. After you heal my body, after you touch my family, after you put us back together again, after this, there will be glory. Hallelujah.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this COVID-19 vaccine webinar. My name is Kendra Price, and I will serve as your facilitator today. I work at Emory University as the Government Affairs Manager, and my job is to serve as a connector to Emory and a resource for our community. I also work with the Emory Healthcare team of administrators, physicians, and staff to bring you programming such as what we are doing today. We are grateful for the partnership with St. Philip AME Church in Atlanta, as well as Pastor Watley for making himself available to speak with us today and for hosting us. This afternoon, we will hear from Mr. Jim Forstner, Dr. Xanthia Wiley, as well as Dr. Andrew Dixon and Mr. Greg Levitt, who are both members of St. Philip. To begin, we will hear from Pastor Watley, who is the senior pastor of the historic St. Philip AME Church in Atlanta, Georgia. He is nationally and internationally recognized and has the distinction of being the conference preacher for the Hampton University Ministers Conference for 2 consecutive years, as well as a conference lecturer. Dr. Watley is a mentor and an educator, as well as a prolific author who has written and edited 26 books. Dr. Watley received his Bachelor of Arts in Theology from St. Louis University and a Master of Divinity from the Interdenominational Theological Center. He received a Master of Philosophy and his Doctor of Philosophy and Ethics from Columbia University. He holds a Doctor of Divinity from Payne Theological Seminary. Dr. Watley, thank you so much for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for allowing us the privilege of hosting and being a part of this webinar. And thank you for your sensitivity to the needs of our community. St. Philip has always had a commitment to the community. We have been serving as a testing site over the past few months. I've had 9 tests myself, and our feeding program has quadrupled in terms of its outreach. And so the use of our facility as a vaccination site is just an extension of our commitment to the community. As a church, we believe that medicine and faith work together, that God can work miracles in and of God's self, but God often uses medical personnel as instruments for healing and for hope. And so we are honored that you would consider us to be a partner, a junior partner in your efforts to reach the larger community. We are serving as a vaccination site March 11th, 12th, and 13th. We're partnering with Walgreens. And I might say that that we have been seeking to be a vaccination site since the development of Pfizer and Moderna, because I've always felt that that a one size fits all approach does not work, and that when there is a hermeneutic of suspicion, as is present based upon historic racism, then there needs to be an effort to reach the underserved community. I'll be glad when we move beyond being classified as underserved.
Yes.
But those parts of the community that either do not have access or who find complications and roadblocks when we do try to reach out. The church, as you know, is still the most viable institution in the African American community. And there is a level of trust in terms of the integrity of the church. So if people need to be vaccinated, you bring it into those institutions that have credibility, and you have people that, such as the persons on this webinar, who have credibility and respect from the community to be the advocates. And so we started out with, they first told us they were going to allow us 2,000. We filled those up in a day and a half. Then they said 4,000. And we look upon this as a first step. We are available and open to partnering with any legitimate agency with competent healthcare personnel who have credibility to assist in whatever ways we can as a vaccination site, excuse me, or in any other way to make sure that that African Americans, brown skinned people, and other oppressed communities have equal access and opportunity to be vaccinated.
Pastor Wally, thank you so much. I want to say also that I am a proud member of St. Philip AME Church in Atlanta, and I do appreciate all that you do for the community. So thank you so very much, and thank you for hosting us again today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we will hear from Jim Forstner, who will moderate the panel discussion with Drs. Dixon and Dr. Wiley. So I wanted to introduce Jim Forstner. Jim Forstner, we will hear from Jim Forstner, who has been the former DeKalb Medical Hospitals and Emory Healthcare. He's been there since 2004. After serving in several leadership roles, Jim was promoted to the role of Chief Operating Officer in 2016. And in 2018, he became the first CEO of Emory Decatur Hospital, Emory Hillendale Hospital, and Emory Long-Term Acute Care, when the DeKalb Medical System merged into Emory Healthcare. Jim's background reflects a rich set of educational and business experiences that have prepared him well for this role. He was an honors undergraduate at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, earning a Bachelor of Science in Health Policy and Administration. He went on to earn a Master's of Science in Health Policy, Planning and Financing from the University of London's School of Economics. Jim will serve as the moderator for this afternoon's discussion between our two physicians. Thank you, Jim, for being with us and moderating our discussion.
Thank you so much, Kendra and Pastor Watley. I can't thank you enough for what you do for our community. Hearing your words really resonate. That is all of our jobs, to make sure that we are bringing healthcare services to the community and providing those services in the communities that need those services. And I can tell you, as the representative of Emory Healthcare, one of four on this phone call, we strive to do that every day. And I'm honored to be able to moderate a discussion today specifically around vaccines. You should be very proud of your community. 4,000 vaccination signups in a day and a half. I mean, wow, that is incredibly impressive. Emory has put about 70,000 vaccines into folks' arms, and we are aggressively moving. But I think having those community partners is just absolutely critical. And again, Pastor Watley, and for your whole team, just thank you so much for what you do for the community. As Kendra said, I'm privileged to be the CEO for your community hospitals, the hospital in Decatur, Emory Decatur Hospital on North Decatur Road, the hospital in the city of Stonecrest called Emory Hillendale Hospital, and a long-term acute care hospital in downtown Decatur. And I've been with the organization for 17 years under the tutelage of Mr. Greg Levitt, who we'll hear from as we move through this discussion. So I absolutely am excited about being able to moderate this discussion about COVID-19 and especially the vaccine. We've got two Emory physicians on the line with us, Dr. Dixon, who's a nephrologist, and Dr. Wiley, who is an infectious disease specialist. Actually, I think that Dr. Dixon and Mr. Levitt and Kendra are all members of St. Philip. So we're trying to bring the family for the discussion. I want to make sure that if there are questions that arise, please feel free to type those in the QA or the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we will go into those. We also have some specific questions for Dr. Dixon and Dr. Wiley as we move through the process. But if you have questions, we certainly want to hear from you and be able to answer those questions with the experts that we have here today. So with that, I'd like actually Dr. Wiley and Dr. Dixon to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their background, and absolutely, kind of give your perspective on the COVID vaccine, and then we'll get the discussion started. So Dr. Wiley, would you mind going first?
Absolutely. So first of all, Dr. Watley, thank you so much for this opportunity. I grew up in the church, so I know how important it is for medicine and the church to join together to bring this information to the community. So I am an infectious diseases physician. I'm based at Emory Midtown. I started taking care of COVID patients at the beginning of March and noticed really, really quickly that it was disproportionately affecting our population. So most of the patients at Midtown who I've taken care of look like me, look like my grandmother, look like my family members, look like most of us on this call. So I'm really happy to be here. One of my primary responsibilities is definitely taking care of COVID patients, but I've been dedicated to getting the word out about the importance of vaccines and how vital it is in our community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Riley, and we really appreciate you being with us today. Dr. Dixon, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Again, Pastor Watley, thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity today. I really appreciate your leadership in what you've done trying to promote the equitability of the vaccines in our community, and also the education that you've done starting in December when you hosted several webinars that I had the privilege to participate with you. My name is Andrew Dixon, and I'm a nephrologist with Northwest Nephrology Clinic. And I've been in the community since at least 1990. I'm currently serving as Chief of Staff at Hillendale Hospital. As you mentioned, I'm also a member of the St. Philip and serving on Steward Board number 1. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And we also are joined by a special guest, Dr. Greg Levitt. I know that, Greg, if you have any words that you'd like to say now, or would you like to wait till the end?
I'm just glad to be here and be part of this webinar, and I want to thank my pastor, Pastor Watley, for allowing us to come at such a short notice, and special thanks to Kenny for putting this together. And I think it's going to be very beneficial after we record this and present it back to the public. Just part to be a part of it. And thank you, Jim, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be the facilitator today.
Really, Greg, I will tell each of you, and Greg, you know this, we appreciate your community outreach and the support that you've given Emory, and the ability for you to help us make sure that we're connecting with the right groups and the right churches and the right organizations in the communities of which you're such a big part. So thank you for what you do as well. And Greg didn't mention, but he also serves on the Emory Healthcare Board of Directors and on the DeKalb Medical Board of Directors. So we also thank you for your service. All right, so first and foremost, I'm going to ask our two physicians, why is it important for everyone to get the vaccine as early as possible, as soon as they become eligible, rather than wait?
So I'm happy to start there. So let's just talk briefly about COVID in our community, in the Black community. So Black people, we are more likely to contract COVID, to be hospitalized with COVID, and to die from COVID. However, if we look at the numbers of vaccines that have been administered thus far, okay, in the United States, 64% of vaccines have been administered to white people, okay? And this is in comparison to less than 10% in Blacks. So the key is it is disproportionately affecting Black people. We're contracting it and dying from it and receiving the vaccine at lower numbers. And if we bring this kind of closer to home here in Georgia, we have about 250,000 Black people who have received the vaccines here in Georgia. This is compared to over 800,000 whites. So we're contracting it, more, dying from it more, and receiving the vaccine less. So what I like to say is one of the things that we can do to help protect not just ourselves, but our family members, our church parishioner members, our loved ones, is by getting the vaccine. And also we are all ready to be able to get out, go to church in person again. And something that will help us all do this quicker is as many of us as possible receiving the vaccine.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon.
Yes, it's important that we receive the vaccine as soon as possible in order so that we can protect ourselves. The vaccine is extremely important in our communities. And I think that giving the vaccine and receiving the vaccine is the most important way that we can protect ourselves. As Dr. Wiley mentioned, we're disproportionately given the vaccine at this time. And it's extremely important that when it's offered, that we accept the vaccine.
Thank you very much. I would follow up on that. There are 3 vaccines, 2 that are available now and 1 that's becoming available very quickly. Are they safe and effective? Should certain patients select certain types, or would you recommend individuals get the first vaccine that is available to them? So Dr. Dixon, I'll start with you on that one, and then Dr. Wiley, if you would finish up.
Yes, we have 3 different vaccines that have been approved so far. The Moderna, the Pfizer, which are very similar in nature in the way that they work, and the recent one, the Johnson & Johnson. One vaccine, the Pfizer and the Moderna, requires 2 shots, and they're about 95% effective. And the Johnson & Johnson is only a 1-shot vaccine. And the importance about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is that don't get hung up on the effectiveness initially that they're reporting. What's more important is that no one died, and that was 100% effective. So all of the vaccines are very effective, and I would have no hesitation in taking any of them. And I think that you shouldn't either.
And I echo everything that Dr. Dixon just said. Don't get hung up on, effectiveness. The most important thing is hospitalizations and deaths. Those who have received the vaccines, we have not seen deaths. So that's the most important thing. So what I tell my family members, my loved ones, my patients, is the first one that you can receive, that's the one to get.
Thank you. Absolutely. We would support that across Emory Healthcare. As if there is a vaccine that is accessible, by all means, we do not want you to wait. We want you to make sure that you get that shot in the arm just as quickly as we can. On that note, we have seen and heard a lot in the news about new variants, whether they're from South Africa or whether they're from other places, especially in Europe. Is there any information on the effectiveness of the vaccines that are available today on those variants? And how can we make sure that we really decrease opportunities for this virus to mutate and create even more strains? So, Dr. Wiley, I'll start with you on that one, and then Dr. Dixon, if you have anything to add.
Absolutely. So with respect to the variants, what I like to tell people is that a virus's entire job in life is to mutate, so that it can remain in the community, it can continue to infect us. So these mutations are not surprising, and they are to be expected. The great thing is that all 3 of our currently available vaccines do have effectiveness, okay, against many of these variants, okay? The number of variants are we don't know the exact numbers in the population because we're not testing everyone for the variants. So what I like to tell people is the way that we can decrease the likelihood of having more variants is by as many of us as possible getting the vaccine, so that we can decrease the burden of the disease, decrease the amount of COVID that's in the community, and that will help decrease the variants. But please don't let any worry about these variants prevent you from going to get the vaccine.
Yeah, The manufacturers have assured us that they feel that the products that they have produced are very effective against the variants. Johnson and Johnson in particular has shown that they actually studied the variant in South Africa, and it did very well. And so I think that we're very well protected against the variants. The Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine produces such an overwhelming response until even if it drops down to a lower response, you're still protected.
Great advice. And Pastor Watley, I noticed you came off mute. Anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd just like to give a personal word of testimony. My mother was hospitalized with COVID. My mother is 90, she's now 91. My wife of 52 years has lived with multiple sclerosis for 40 of those years. So I have my mother, who is 91, and my wife, who has multiple sclerosis, pre-existing condition, and I'm a rising senior. And I prayed hard for my mother. And she was hospitalized from May 31st to July 2nd. And, you know, people just told her, we don't have many people leaving like you at your age. And so I'm aware of the power of prayer, but as soon as the vaccine became available, all three of us got vaccinated. I mean, the first opportunity we had, I used whatever connections I had, not just to get vaccinated myself, but to make sure that my mother and my spouse got vaccinated. I would not risk their lives. So if a 91-year-old woman with COVID can be vaccinated, if my wife with multiple sclerosis can get vaccinated, if I can get vaccinated, then it is critical for all of us. And it's important for us to take what possibilities we have. I mean, when the risk factor, when we leave our houses, greater for us getting in car accidents and running into difficulties. But none of us allow what might happen stop us from getting in our cars to do what we have to do to go to work. Well, we can't let the possibility of a variant that stop us from taking advantage of medical means that are available to us. And so the vulnerable aspects of our population, and my family represents all three. I haven't touched my mother in a year, and we've been vaccinated, but because I'm being especially careful because I saw how tenuous her situation was. This is not the time to give in to fear or to let down our guard. Each of us has a responsibility to use whatever means we can to protect ourselves and our loved ones. That's all.
That is incredibly well said.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody could have said it better. And thank you for sharing your personal experience and testimony. On that note, I think that there is some hesitation, and I think it varies by community and for good reason, about the potential side effects and risks associated with the COVID vaccines. And I'm talking about all three together. We've heard very positive information from Pastor Watley, as well as both of our physicians on the phone. But I want to ask just point blank, are these vaccines safe? And what are some of the side effects that come from taking those vaccines?
So I can start here. So if you don't hear anything else I say, the vaccines are safe. The vaccines are effective. So since so many of you are going to receive the vaccines later on this week, so what you can expect, okay, and this is actually what I had as well, is when you receive the vaccine, anticipate you're going to have likely a sore arm. You may have some achiness. You may have some fatigue, and some people have fevers. However, these are very, very short-lived and last between 24 to 72 hours at most and responds to Tylenol. And what I like to tell my patients is I'd rather have a few days of achiness than to end up in the hospital with COVID, or the worst, dying from COVID. With respects to severe reactions or severe side effects from COVID, they are rare to none. And we mean 1 in a million or less people have a severe reaction, which can be shortness of breath, et cetera. Extremely rare. And again, in all of these vaccine trials, no one died, which is the most important thing. No one died from COVID in the vaccine trials. So it is safe and effective, and I recommend it for anyone who can get it.
Dr. Dix, anything you'd add?
No, I agree with what Dr. Wiley said. My wife received the vaccine, and she did have some myalgias and a fever, lasted less than 24 hours. The next day, she was doing her regular job.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. One final question around the vaccine is there.
I think Dr. Levitt had a comment.
Sorry, Dr. Levitt.
Yes, Ben and I, we took the shot. We had our second shot Monday or 2 weeks ago. And we heard all these myths about the different side effects. So I took off 2 days, but we had no headaches, no sore arms. We had no effects at all. And we had nothing to affect my wife and I. And we were wondering when the lady gave me my asthma shot, and she rubbed the alcohol on my arm, and I said, "When are you going to give me this shot?" She said, "I'm finished, Mr. Levitt." And I slept on my arm that night. We didn't have to take any aspirin, no Tylenols, no aching, no side effects whatsoever. So some people have none at all, and we were blessed not to have any side effects.
That is a blessing. Thank you. And Pastor Watley, would you like to share your experience?
Yes, we had absolutely none either. But and the doctors can correct me on this. I came here from New Jersey, and I was asking, New Jersey, we eat a lot of Italian food. And I asked, what do you eat here? And they told me, you're in the South, we fry everything. I believe I'm correct in saying that too much fried food can cause you to have diabetes and heart disease, obesity, and death. Nobody talks about the side effects of all this fried food we eat.
Sure.
Well, if you can eat all this fried food and pork, you can take the vaccine. I mean, when you talk about side effects, the side effects of our diet are much worse than the side effects of a vaccine. So if you can eat a piece of fried chicken or pig foot or chitlin, you can take the vaccine. I mean, that's just.
I love that, Dr. Whiteley. I love it.
I love it. Not heard it put that way, but I might need to use that a little bit. But thank you so much. One final question, and then we will ask Greg Levitt to kind of help us move into the QA portion. Again, I'll remind the attendees, if you do have questions, please enter them in the QA function, and then Kendra and I will make sure that you get answers to those questions. So once somebody gets the vaccine, do they need to continue wearing masks and socially distancing?
I'm happy to take that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's very important that you continue to wear the mask and social distance. We'll move into a phase at some point that we can take them off. If you're living in a household where everyone has been vaccinated and waited the proper time after the vaccination, which is about 2 weeks, then you probably can take the mask off at home and socialize there. But other than that, you should wear your mask outside and keep the social distancing. Dr. Wiley?
No, you took the words out of my mouth.
Great minds think alike. And we do have time for one more that I think is really important. So the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine are actually 2-dose vaccines that have to be taken a number of weeks apart. Why is it really important that folks get both doses and not just the first dose?
So it's very important to get both doses, because if you want that full effectiveness, you know, up to the 95%, you need both doses to achieve that. So usually after the first dose, you make it up to approximately 50% effectiveness. But if you want that full 95% effectiveness, you get that, you know, approximately 7 to 14 days after that second dose. So that's why it's so important.
Absolutely. Dr. Dix, anything you'd like to add?
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for both your testimony and your expertise around COVID-19 and the vaccination and how it impacts our community. I will remind everybody that there is a lot of information at www.emoryhealthcare.org, including a lot of information around the vaccines and around the CDC guidelines. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kendra to help us moderate any questions that come in. And I know that Dr. Greg Levitt also has something that he'd like to share. So Kendra, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jim, so much. And thank you, everyone. That was a great discussion. So thanks for moderating that, Jim. I don't have any questions in the chat box so far. I just want to remind everyone that's on the call, if you have a question for our panelists, either of them or any of them, please drop them in the Q&A box. I do have a question. I'm wondering, how long is the vaccine effective?
So that's a great question. I'll be honest with you, what we know is that it is effective at least 3 to 6 months, okay? With respects to beyond that time, still gathering data to really know that answer. Also, a lot of people ask, oh, will I need to receive a booster at some point moving forward? We don't know the answer to that, okay? Really focusing right now on making sure that we can get as many people as possible to get the current vaccines. So yeah, so at least 3 to 6 months.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That does help. I have a question from one of our audience members. Is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine as safe as the other vaccines? It says there have been suggestions that it is not as safe as the others. So just wondering if the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is as safe as the others.
It is definitively as safe as the others. When we're looking at hospitalizations and death, they're all three are equivalent. And I'll be honest with you, what I'm always the most concerned about is if someone has to be hospitalized, and of course we want everyone to live. So yes, they're all effective, highly effective.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
And the safety data is very good.
Good.
I have a comment to make, and I think it's really important. So today is March 8th, and so everyone knows that up until this point, the groups that have been vaccinated have included healthcare workers and those who are in long-term facilities and those who are over and equal to 65 years old. Today, thank goodness, Georgia is expanding vaccinations. So as of today, I'm going to read off a list of other folks who can get vaccinated. So many people have asked about our teachers. The teachers are eligible to get vaccinations starting today. So educators and staff, any adults with intellectual or developmental disabilities and their caretakers, really important, their caretakers as well, and parents of children with complex medical conditions such as cancer, congenital heart disease, asthma, sickle cell diabetes, and obesity. So we're expanding, and it's so important for Georgia to expand and catch up with the rest of the United States, because I'm not sure if everyone knows, Georgia, we are all the way at the bottom when it comes to vaccine administration. We have to do better. So thank goodness, as of today, all of the teachers in the audience, it's your turn.
Awesome. That is great to know. So thank you for reminding of us of what is who can get vaccines now, because it's important. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? If not, what I can do is introduce Mr. Greg Levitt, and then we can just continue to have a discussion until we end. So if you have any questions, audience members, please be sure to drop them in the Q&A section, and we will definitely get to them before we close. And I thank you all for joining us. I wanted to welcome and thank Mr. Levitt for being with us today. Mr. Levitt is the founder and CEO of Gregory B. Levitt and Sons Funeral Homes and Crematory. He is a third-generation funeral home owner and a native of Conyers, Georgia. Mr. Levitt, as Jim mentioned, sits on several boards, including the Emory Hospital Board of Directors. He is a member of the 100 Black Men of DeKalb and is very active. He and his family are very active in the community. They continuously express their commitment to others and pour back into the community by being very active in various organizations and making generous donations to various charities. Mr. Levitt is also a steward at St. Philip AME Church and was instrumental in making this webinar a reality. Thank you, Mr. Levitt. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kendra. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you all today. I'm going to come to you with a different perspective with COVID-19. Being a community leader and being in the mortuary business, I have an opportunity to see how it has changed people's lives with the COVID. I would like to share with you, starting last March, when COVID eventually hit the Atlanta, metropolitan Atlanta area. All the funeral homes in the metropolitan Atlanta area and around Georgia, death rates are up 35% over the previous year. And it's due basically directly to COVID. And it has had a major impact on families. When we had our first major outbreak in Albany, Georgia, it was contracted at a funeral home, at a funeral service where this minister came from Atlanta to preach a service. And at that service, within 10 days after that, they had a major outbreak in Albany, Georgia. Luckily, the owner did not die, but two of his employees died that caught COVID from being at that funeral service. And over the last 10 months, we have had individuals that died with COVID as young as 24 years old and as old as 104 years old. And 90% of the people that we had died with COVID have been people that look like me, look like you, us that are here on the line. However, what the public do not see, but what we see is that for every 10 death certificate that come in our office of death, if 3 of those said cause of COVID is the first cause of death, those other 5 death certificates will have a secondary or third cause. On a death certificate, they have the primary cause, the second, and the third. And most all of them coming in now had, at some point, a person may have had COVID, but the COVID didn't kill them. They had a blood clot, they had a heart attack, or they had a stroke. So when they look at the numbers of how many people died with COVID, I think you could triple that number to get a true number if they died with COVID-related deaths. And I tell all the young people, we have got to get the shots when they come available. We have got to stay away from our senior citizens. The lady that I buried that was 104 years old back in December, she had not gone out of her house since April. So that means someone brought that disease into the house, and they tried to stay very restricted. I had a 32-year-old man last week had COVID, got well, and went out 2 days later and had a blood clot. They gave his cause of death a blood clot, but he just got over COVID 2 days prior to that. So the young people, we have got to wear our masks in the public as well as home when we do enter the houses of individuals, particularly senior citizens. And it has just been devastating to see how it had affected family members. I've had one family that I've been serving this family since 1989. They had only had 3 deaths in their family from 1989 to 2020. Since July 2nd until the last of March, the family had 7 deaths in their family. 5 of those 7 deaths were COVID related. And the ages ran from 39 years old up until the great aunt who was 93 years old. So this COVID is not a friend to our community, particularly if we have hypertension, diabetes, and obesity, and heart disease. That's why I think it affects our community so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Mr. Levitt. That's very important to know and to hear from you, because I know you deal with death every day. We do have a few more questions, but I wanted to ask any of the panels if you have any comments or anything to add to what Mr. Levitt said.
I do. And Mr. Levitt, thank you so much for bringing that up, because I run into this taking care of patients on a daily basis. When you're having someone who is 95 and 100 years old who's coming in with COVID, and just like you say, they have not left home. Even my own grandparents, been married over 65 years, both of them contracted COVID in early January in the hospital at the same time. And it was difficult for our family having to stand outside of a window to see our loved ones in the hospital. And neither of them had left the house. So we know that someone brought it in. So what I say, especially to the young people in the audience, is you have to, until it's time for you to get your vaccine, you have to do your best to protect our loved ones, our great aunts, our grandparents, et cetera, because you may get COVID and survive. However, if your loved ones who are older with other medical problems, they may not.
Right. Also, I would like to add one thing I forgot. Serving the family is different now. Since we have not been able to provide the full traditional service normally like we have, there's a lot of stress and a lot of mental issues that we have with our community. Because we as Afro-American, you have great traditional funeral services. And we have been able to limit, at one point we had to limit it to 10 people to a service. Now, thank God we're allowed to have 50, but we're not allowed to go in churches, and the families are just getting devastated. They're being very rude because they don't realize they're dealing with death, with grief, but they don't have a way to deal with it because we not have a traditional service. And it's causing a lot of mental illness for not only my staff, but the families that we serve. So as soon as we can get this under control, I think it's gonna be better for all of America, particularly those in our community. So we can start back to those traditional services, going into churches, having great celebration, having great repast, and fellowshipping with each other. And we have not had that opportunity.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mr. Levitt. Anyone else before I go on to the questions that we have in the chat?
I would just add, on behalf of Emory Healthcare, our physicians, our governance leaders, all 26,000 staff, we're here to serve the community. We're here to serve the community in times of stress and in times of good times. I will tell you from the bottom of my heart, we would like to be taking care of the diabetes and the blood pressure and the other systemic challenges we have in our communities. COVID really has taken a year away from the healthcare community in a lot of ways. And as an organization and as a community, I think that we'll, in the long run, learn from this and be a little bit stronger as a community and better for the next one. What I will tell you though is that it is our expectation, and I imagine our panelists' expectation, that we're going to be living with COVID in some form or fashion for quite some time. It's not just going to go away. So the safety measures about distancing, masking, washing your hands, and by gosh, get that vaccine as soon as you can. Those are going to be critical, and you're going to need to hear about those over and over and over and over. And I can't thank Pastor Watley, Kendrick, Dr. Levitt, Dr. Dixon, Dr. Wiley, and all the folks here at Emory that do so much every day for allowing us this opportunity to talk with your community and to support the vaccine distribution and the vaccine uptake in DeKalb County.
Thank you, Jim. So a question I have from an audience member, they say if you have had COVID, you should only take one dose. And they wanted to get our thoughts on this as panelists.
I can answer that. I've had COVID and I've gotten 2 shots. So there's no data at the moment to validate that you should only get 1 shot. They're studying that, but there's nothing so far that says you shouldn't get 2 shots. And so you're eligible to get the vaccine 3 months after you have the disease, COVID. We don't know how long the antibodies last, even once you get COVID. I can tell you that I know for a fact that it lasted for about 5 months because we did check it after I had COVID. But there's no data that says that you should not get the vaccine and get 2 shots.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. Here's another question. It says, where should you wear your mask? Just outside or when you're among other people? And then is double masking really necessary?
So great question. So you should wear your mask. Definitely not necessarily if you're outside and not around anyone. The most important thing is wearing your mask when you are in the presence of someone else. Okay. Now, the only time that it is okay per the CDC to not wear your mask is if you are with another person who has been fully vaccinated. Okay. Then and both of you all have been fully vaccinated, then that's okay. With respects to double masking, the most important thing is the fit of the mask. So if you have a mask that fits just fine, you do not need to have 2 masks. I never wear 2 myself. Okay, so 1 is completely fine. The most important thing is it needs to fit.
So if your mask, thank you, is layered, let me ask. So if you have a single layer mask, do you still need to wear it, or just 1, not 2?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the fit of it. If you have a single layered mask that fits your face just fine, you do not have to wear 2 masks.
Good to know. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we don't have any more questions from the audience. So what I thought we could do, and audience members, if you have another question or 2, we're happy to answer them. But what I'd like to do is just go around the Zoom just to hear from everyone your final thoughts as we wrap up and close. So what I will do is start with Jim Forstner. Do you have any closing remarks, anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Thank you, Kendra. No, I think this has been a wonderful opportunity to share the story around the COVID-19 virus and its vaccines. And again, on behalf of Emory, and want to say thank you to each and every one of the panelists and all the attendees and everybody who is helping to put a stop to COVID-19 by taking that vaccine over the past few weeks and the next few weeks. So thank you for allowing us to participate, and look forward to participating in the future with Pastor Watley and his team.
Thank you. Dr. Dixon.
Yes, I think it's very important that we all take the take-home message that's just important, that we get the vaccine, and that we also take any vaccine that's offered to us. I think that the ramp up will be very dramatic come next month, and most certainly by May, that everyone should be offered the vaccine by that time, and you should get it.
Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Wiley.
Yeah, so what I would like to say is the vaccines are safe, that they're effective, that COVID is disproportionately affecting the Black community, and that this is one of the things that we can do to help ourselves. Something else that I would like to add is, for those of you who may be wondering, you're young and healthy and getting your vaccine is going to come down the line, you may wonder, what is it that you can do? So what I would recommend is, if you can reach out to an elderly loved one, someone who may need some assistance with transportation, et cetera, Please reach out and take care of your loved ones. And also to our young people, please be mindful of the fact that if you're out and about and not wearing your masks, that you are putting those that you love the most, your grandparents, your great aunts, et cetera, at risk. So please go out and get your vaccine, everyone.
Very important. Thank you. Mr. Levitt.
Yes, 4 things I'd like to leave with you all today. Wear your mask. Wash your hands constantly. Keep social distance. And don't gather in large groups. If you do that, without the shot, you'll be safe. And last but not least, when that opportunity comes for you to get the shot, please take it.
Perfect. Thank you. And last but not least, Pastor Watley.
Just a couple of things that as a pastor, I can really resonate to what Dr. Levitt has been talking about in terms of helping people manage not simply grief, but even the reality of loneliness and depression. And those are side effects for not getting the vaccination also. And I would urge for St. Philip to become a vaccination site. We really, with help of persons of influence, Miss Kendra and Brother Levitt and others of you, had to really work overtime to do this. Unfortunately, vaccination sites have become like mass political issues. And so I would encourage as many of us who have larger contacts to use whatever influence we have to bring the vaccination in the community. It's not just having the desire. It is really a matter of confronting politics that is still very racist, still very biased, to say that these vaccines are to come into the Black community and placed where they can be taken advantage of. And so my last appeal is for us to understand, not be naive, that it's just an oversight, that it requires all of us using whatever political influence and clout we have, wherever we have it, to say this is a priority. And there are churches all over this city and all over this nation that are well equipped to do what St. Philip is doing. My hope is that what we're doing this week will only be the first instance. My hope is that we will become a major vaccination site, period, for as long as necessary. But for that to happen, it means that we have to be politically astute enough to say that you cannot put, as important as mass vaccination sites are, you cannot put them at Mercedes-Benz stadiums and at the airport and expect to reach the majority of the Black community. And FEMA cannot adopt a national policy without being sensitive to the needs of particular communities. So my last word is a plea for us, because the fight continues. And this is my last point. You know, preachers always have 5 last points. This is my last point. That persons who are in the demographic of Brother Levitt, Dr. Dixon, and myself have to really tell our demographic that we know the history of vaccinations, but this is not that. And it is inaccurate, and untrue and almost escape suicide to say that what is taking place now is a reflection of what has taken place before. This is not that. Okay.
Thank you, Pastor Wiley. That's important to know. And I do know that people are hesitant about the vaccines because of that. So that's important to know. It's also important for all of us on the call to just continue to do what we're doing, to reach other people, to talk about our experiences, to help people to understand that this is not that, as you said, Pastor Wiley. So I want to say thank you all for participating. We are all in this together. I want to thank you all who joined us online. Thank you for being with us today. And as you know, as Jim said, Emory Healthcare is here to help. We're here for whatever you need. So if you know any of us, reach out to Pastor Watley or his staff. And I also want to make sure I thank Pastor Watley's staff, the staff and volunteers at St. Philip who helped to put this together as well as help to spread the word. Thank you. So again, thank you all for being with us today for this very important webinar. Dr. Wiley, I appreciate you. Dr. Dixon, thank you. Jim, Mr. Levitt, and Pastor Watley, thank you so much for making this happen for us and being a partner with us. So with that, I will close. Again, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to St. Philip AME Church.